The movie begins in a crime scene where sirens are heard and the police are actively pursuing criminals. After some time, a cop named John is in a car with his colleague, Breen. Breen was showing him the ring he bought, but John was focused on watching their surroundings. He finally saw a guy running into a van and he drove towards the van and hit it, but when they reached the van, he wasn't there. He then appeared from behind the van and shot Breen. John was sitting in a bar with a friend when he noticed a woman dancing alone. A man across from him mentioned her name was Tina McGuire and that her husband had died of cancer. Tina then approached John, chatted about random topics, and introduced herself. Spotting his framed newspaper photo on the wall, she complimented him, saying she appreciated heroes. She offered to buy him another drink, which they shared before she left, giving him her number as she wanted.
You're a good listener. We'll have to work on the talking part.
At a barbecue party, Tina danced alone, but noticed her daughter, Bethy, on the roof and scolded her to come down. Bethy stormed inside, and later, Tina apologized with ice cream. After a while, they decided to leave. Tina's boyfriend invited them to stay, but she declined and insisted on leaving, rejecting his offer to drive them. As they walked, Tina noticed Bethy's silence and asked what was wrong. Bethy expressed frustration about being treated like a child and revealed she had forgotten what her father looked like, with his memory fading. Tina tried to comfort her, explaining it wasn't her fault, but rather the passage of time. After some persuasion, Bethy finally gives in, and the two reconcile. Tina suggested that they take a shortcut and go through the woods that led them to a scary neighborhood.
You know what? I'm not sure.
Bethy and Tina going to the woods. Suddenly, a group of men surrounded them and started touching them. Tina attempted to run with Bethy, but they caught up and separated them. Bethy hid behind a car and saw her mother getting SA'd and beaten. Tina getting assaulted. After they left, she crawled towards her, only to see that Tina was unconscious. She attempted to wake her up, but she was not responding. Bethy was found walking alone on the street by the police. John arrived at the crime scene to find Tina on the ground, and soon the area was surrounded by police. Tina was rushed to the ER, and Bethy was left traumatized. Tina's mother arrived to comfort Bethy, and as she did, John approached, saying Bethy needed to identify the men involved, as Tina was unresponsive. After this, John and other officers hunted down all of them and then took them to the station. Bethy identified them. The next day, John went to visit her in the hospital and saw Bethy crying. He sat with her and they started watching a children's show. One of the attackers' parents refused to believe their son had done what he is accused of. Their priest gave them the contact information of a criminal lawyer. They went to talk to a lawyer, but they couldn't afford it. So the mother decided to use their house as a payment.
Our house.
Tina finally woke up, but she doesn't remember anything. After she got discharged, she and Bethy went to Tina's mother's house. Later that night, Bethy woke up to Tina's cries and ran to her room. She was sitting by the corner crying. She had remembered the incident. The next morning, bullies confronted Bethy and attacked her and her mother verbally.
All those lies about my brothers? Bitch better watch her mouth.
One of the bullies is the sister of the two attackers. This left Bethy distraught. Back at home, Tina's lawyer was getting her ready for the trial. Tina is emotional and unable to control herself when she remembers the incident, but it was important that she showed herself to the jury. Her lawyer told her the first day of court is the first step to moving on, and left. During the trial, Tina arrived with her lawyer and family, taking her seat. Her criminal lawyers arrived late. Tina's mother began the opening statement, detailing the emotional impact on both Tina and Bethy. John was called to testify and described the incident. The criminal's lawyer pointed out the lack of a police call history, but John clarified that he and his partner had been returning from another call. Next, Tina took the stand, but the judge, clearly unsympathetic, ordered her to remove her glasses, despite her lawyer's explanation of her head injury. Tina struggled with emotion during her testimony, and when the judge told her to step down, she insisted on continuing. Her lawyer argued that the evidence was clear, and the men should face first-degree assault charges. The criminal lawyer stood up and began to present their side of the case. He acknowledged that his clients had sexual intercourse with Tina, but insisted it was consensual. He explained that his clients admitted to having sex with Mrs. McGuire in the boathouse, but emphasized it was not rape. He then detailed the events leading up to that night, stating that Mrs. McGuire had been drinking at a party earlier in the evening, hosted by Raymond Cassie, her boyfriend. The lawyer described the party as involving 19 people and 5 kegs of beer, which he claimed was excessive. After a fight with her boyfriend, Mrs. McGuire allegedly took her 12-year-old daughter to Rocky Point Park, where she met the defendants, whom she knew. The defense lawyer claimed that Mrs. McGuire offered to exchange money for the act, and after the encounter, demanded more money and attacked the defendants. He argued that his clients were only defending themselves before leaving. The lawyer denied that his clients knew the child was present and suggested that the girl, who had reportedly hurt herself while crawling into a storage area, never witnessed any crimes, including sexual assault. He implied the child was confused and frightened and blamed her mother for exposing her to such a dangerous situation. The lawyer also accused Mrs. McGuire and her daughter of fabricating their testimonies, claiming the defendants were innocent and the evidence would prove it. The jury applauded the defense lawyer, causing Tina to become emotional. She screamed at him in response. Everyone left, and John sat behind, alone in anger. Tina's mother is angry by what happened and kicked the lawyer, Dixon, out when she came to visit Tina. Dixon tried to tell her that they can still win, but she told her they don't want to put Tina on the line again and closed the door on her. Meanwhile, Tina decided to unalive herself and emptied her pill bottle, but before she could take them, she changed her mind and spilled them. She then got dressed and went to the bar. While drinking, she broke the glass and was freaked out by a man who tried to help her. She then got out, and as she was about to jump off of a cliff, John appeared from behind and stopped her.
Daughter.
John tried to talk her out of it. He reminded her about Bethy. He then held her and walked her away from the cliff. Bethy came back to the house, which was empty. She then looked out of the window and saw John dropping her mother off. He then told Bethy that she needs to keep an eye on her mother and to call him if anything happens, and gave her his number. After a while, Bethy went to answer the door and saw her cat dead and hanging by a rope by the door. She then saw one of the attackers laughing while she looked at the cat, terrified. She screamed to leave them alone and cut the rope to get the cat down. Bethy took the cat and buried it in the garden before his grandma came so that she wouldn't be worried. The attacker, Jimmy, went to a bar where he met Fritz. Jimmy was acting strangely and arguing with Fritz. Unbeknownst to them, John was nearby, monitoring their move. He then followed Fritz out, and as Fritz was about to get in his car, he saw Jimmy attacking Fritz.
Jimmy.
When Jimmy turned to him, he shot him and approached Fritz. He then called an ambulance. During the interrogation, John refused to admit that he knew it was Jimmy who he had shot. John stated it was dark and Jimmy was holding a knife. The detectives pressed him further, asking if he fired his weapon purely in self-defense. John confirmed this. The detectives were worried that he might lose his job, citing his 3 years of service, including his time in Desert Storm and his Purple Heart. The detectives pointed out that the apparent coincidence of him, Fritz, and Jimmy being in a parking lot together. John dismissed it as a coincidence and stated that it was to discharge his duty as a law officer. The criminal's lawyer, Jay, proposed a plea deal to Dixon, suggesting they drop the SA and predatory assault charges and reduce the aggravated assaults to misdemeanors. The deal offered 18 months for each of the 2 counts related to Tina and the child to be served consecutively, totaling 3 years. Dixon, angered by the offer, walked away. Meanwhile, Marvin and Lloyd, the other 2 attackers, sat with Jay and their parents, refusing to plead guilty and rejecting the 3-year prison deal. Later that night, Marvin took Lloyd to meet an investigator. Lloyd, confused, asked why they weren't going directly to Jay. Marvin explained that the investigator was working for Jay, a legal investigator, and emphasized that anything incriminating couldn't come from their lawyer. He snapped at Lloyd, reminding him that Jay was an officer of the court and they had to keep things clean. They got out to meet the investigator, and it turned out to be John. He got out of his car and shot both of them. Lloyd fell from a cliff after getting shot, and John pushed Marvin down. Journalists started swarming Lloyd and Marvin's parents' house following their disappearance. Their mother blamed Tina for it. Bethy and Tina saw the report, and Tina reassured her that they wouldn't be able to hurt them anymore. Bethy went shopping with her grandma, and the last attacker, Ray, threatened her to testify, saying he was not there, and disappeared before being seen. That night, John lured Ray to a motel. He threatened him with a gun and made him write a confession. He then made him hold the gun to make it look like he had unalived himself. Tina and Bethy prepared to move out. Meanwhile, Jay went to talk to John, telling him that he was only doing his job. He then got on his bike and left. Tina and Bethy came to meet John. John asked to talk to Bethy alone, and she told him they were moving to California, and she was there to say goodbye. They said an emotional goodbye, and expressed love for each other. John then left as his colleague called for him as Bethy and Tina watched him from a distance. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.